Every year on the same cold, unforgiving night, the river takes one life, and it demands a name to keep flowing. It's not a natural occurrence. It's a chilling, precise transaction. This annual tax on the living has been paid for over a century, a clockwork of tragedy that defies all logic and human intervention. Think about the generational terror this imposes, knowing that no matter how safe you live, no matter how much you barricade your doors, the date alone is a sentence. But this year was different. The river, that cold, dark vein running through Mill Creek, chose someone who wasn't supposed to die. A random victim would have been easier for the town to swallow, another sad coincidence to sweep under the rug. But this person had connections, a loving mother, a future that was violently severed on a night that should have been nothing more than a late winter drizzle. What kind of power does a body of water hold? A power that transcends the physical realm and dictates the very fate of souls? The silence in the wake of these disappearances is louder than any storm, a chilling, collective breath held by an entire community, a shared guilt that tastes like river silt and regret. This isn't just folklore. It's a terrifying annual event woven into the very fabric of a seemingly peaceful American town. The townsfolk don't mourn. They just count the days until the cycle begins again. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. What if the horror isn't just the losing but the knowing? What if the real monster is the desperate human decision to let it happen, year after year, just to buy another year of shallow peace? Stay until the end, because the shocking discovery divers made beneath that riverbed changed everything an entire town believed about life, death, and memory. And when the body finally surfaced, it was already holding a small, waterlogged piece of wood with the next name carved into it. A chilling promissory note written in the cold hand of the dead. This is the story of Mill Creek, a town nestled deep in the folds of Oregon, a place where the mountains whisper secrets and the air smells perpetually of pine and damp earth. Its population sits at a static 2107, a number that seems strangely regulated, never quite growing, as if held in check by an invisible, ruthless hand. For decades, locals have whispered about the river's debt. They speak of it in hushed tones after the sun goes down, treating it not as history, but as an ever-present threat. Some of the younger generation, those who've left and returned, cling to the idea that it's nothing more than morbid folklore, the kind of local legend designed to sell cheap postcards. But the elders, the ones with eyes that have seen too many marches come and go, they say it's a pact, a desperate deal made long ago, now enforced by something cold, relentless, and hungry. It's an unspoken rule, a tradition of dread. Why does someone die every year on the same date? Why the consistency? Why the brutal, unyielding demand? Who keeps this horrific tradition alive? Is it a person, a secretive society, or something far more ancient? And what exactly does the river want with their names? For generations, the authorities, mostly complacent or scared, treated the drownings as tragic, unsettling, yet ultimately random coincidences. They'd blame the strong, invisible undertow or the deceptive, paralyzing cold of the early spring water. But the shocking regularity of the dates, the unsettling precision of the disappearances, the fact that no matter how skilled the victim, they were always taken, it defied simple logic. It was a statistical impossibility masquerading as bad luck. What starts as local superstition will unravel into something darker, something deeply human, and terrifyingly real. The town's hidden history, buried beneath layers of forced normalcy and decades of denial, is about to break the surface. The pervasive silence of the townsfolk isn't just the natural grief of a small community. It's a heavy, suffocating secret. It's the sound of fear winning. The fragile peace of Mill Creek shattered for good the moment the river claimed a life that truly mattered. For generations, people had quietly accepted the annual drownings as a terrible fate. But that acceptance ended last March when the victim was Eleanor Reed's only son, Sam. Sam wasn't just another name in a file. He was a strong swimmer, a vibrant young man with a life stretching out before him. He was supposed to inherit his grandmother's general store. He vanished while fishing the banks without a splash, without a struggle, as if the air itself had swallowed him. Eleanor, a kind, retired middle school history teacher in her early 60s, had always been the rock of the community, the woman who remembered everyone's birthdays. Now she was broken. Her grief was raw, corrosive, and fiercely defiant. She stood on the riverbank every single day for 6 months, rain or shine, her hands worn raw from clutching a faded photograph of Sam. Her neighbors would drive by, offer platitudes, and then speed up, desperate to avoid the painful truth etched on her face. He wasn't careless, she would tell anyone who would listen, her voice shaking with desperate conviction, her eyes blazing with a grief that refused to be quiet. The river took him, it reached up and pulled him down. The town's silent acceptance, their quick dismissal of the tragedy as just the river being the river, felt like a second theft. For Eleanor, the river wasn't dangerous until the day she found a small, smooth river stone near the spot Sam vanished, with his name, Samuel R., carved shallowly into its surface. This cold, chilling foresight turned a tragedy into an undeniable, terrifying pattern. It was proof that this was not nature. It was malice. The discovery of the carved stone landed heavy and cold on the desk of Sheriff Daniel Cross. Daniel, 45, a man whose face was already lined from the thankless job of policing a town that preferred its secrets to its laws, was immediately on edge. He had grown up here, listening to the river stories as cautionary tales. Now, those tales were his jurisdiction. He desperately wanted to believe it was just a string of terrible, statistical misfortune, some local lunatic trying to terrorize an old woman. But the annual reports piled up on the same date year after year, refusing to fit the simple narrative of accidental drowning. Daniel remembered his own father, a man of quiet authority, telling him as a boy, "The river gives and the river takes. Don't go near it in March." It was a local saying he'd always dismissed as superstitious nonsense. The carving on Sam's stone was too neat, too purposeful. It wasn't vandalism, it was a ritual inscription. Daniel stared at the stone, tracing the letters with a calloused finger. He felt the weight of the past pressing down on his badge, the burden of 100 years of accepted loss. He thought of his own daughter, a recent college graduate who was planning to move back home. Could he allow her to live in a town that silently sacrificed its own? He hated the fear, the chilling, collective surrender of his community. He slammed his hand on the desk, scattering files. "It's cold water, Eleanor," he muttered to himself, reciting the official line. "It's just the undertow." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He knew that the only way to keep the town calm was to keep the truth buried. And then came Lena Park. A sharp, tenacious journalist in her mid-30s from Portland, Lena wasn't buying the town's tired local newspaper reports. She arrived in Mill Creek like a cold draft, bringing an unsettling energy that instantly unsettled the townsfolk. She had spent months tracking a pattern of unsolved, same-date disappearances across rural America. Mill Creek's river, she realized, was the statistical anchor for a far larger, darker anomaly. She rolled into town in a beat-up SUV, equipped with a laptop, a satellite phone, since cell service was patchy, and a relentless curiosity that refused to be politely ignored. She first met Eleanor on the riverbank. Lena didn't offer sympathy. She offered conviction. "I don't believe in accidents, ma'am," Lena said, her voice low and focused. "I believe in secrets." Eleanor looked up, and for the first time in 6 months, she saw not pity, but a mirror of her own determination. Lena's investigation quickly moved beyond surface-level coincidence. When Lena began digging, she didn't just find a history of disappearances and dismissed police reports. She found every name that had ever vanished, not in public records, but in a small, dust-covered iron box hidden beneath the floorboards of the old, seldom-used town hall attic. Inside, tucked between brittle town charters, were scraps of paper, pressed faded wildflowers and dried brittle leaves. Each one was inscribed with a single chilling name, all written in the same unnervingly neat, archaic handwriting. It was a secret, terrifying archive. The river wasn't dangerous, Lena realized, until the day someone decided to enforce its cruel annual tax. Lena's discovery in the town hall attic confirmed her worst fears. This was a sustained 100-year-old ritual. The archive she found, the ledger, as she began to call it, contained names dating back to 1904. Her next step was forensic. She analyzed the police reports she could access. Every year, like clockwork, one person vanished in early March, precisely when the winter thaw made the river swell and the current strongest. But the most disturbing and inexplicable detail was the driftwood. Victims' names consistently appeared on weathered, smooth pieces of river driftwood, sometimes just hours before the victim was reported missing. It was as if the river was providing a physical prophecy of its coming demand. Sheriff Daniel, under pressure from the town council to get this Portland woman off our backs, fought her claims in public, his official denial sounding increasingly strained. He would hold press conferences, blaming unpredictable currents and the paralyzing shock of the cold water, clinging desperately to the official narrative of natural causes. But Eleanor, standing stoically at the back of every press conference, would whisper, "The river chooses. It calls them home." Her conviction was contagious, spreading a quiet panic among the local families. The more Daniel denied it, the more the townsfolk believed Eleanor. What if the river wasn't just taking them, but marking them first? The fear intensified dramatically when Lena started setting up her own covert surveillance. She rigged waterproof, motion-activated cameras and recorders hidden among the riverbank's thicket of willows. She was looking for a human suspect, someone placing the driftwood. What she captured was far worse. The camera caught a child's faint, ethereal voice, not speaking, but calling out names, the names of the missing. The recording was intermittent, overlaid with the rustle of wind and the deep, low burble of the water, but the pattern was unmistakable. Thomas, Sarah, Sam. The sound sent a chill straight through the marrow, bypassing Lena's journalist skepticism and hitting her with pure primal dread. The voices were too distant, too layered, too cold to be concrete evidence, but the undeniable, heartbreaking reality was that the sound was calling the dead. That same night, armed with her camera and a powerful hydrophone, an underwater microphone, Lena returned to the riverbank alone. The footage she captured was grainy, shot through the black surface of the water with infrared. It showed movement under the river, a large, dark shape, shifting and almost reaching upward towards the bank, impossibly fast. It wasn't the slow roll of a fish or the inertial float of a log. It was a purposeful, sentient, and violently desperate motion. Lena watched the playback dozens of times, her breath catching every time the shape surged toward the camera lens. Just as she was packing up, she noticed the splintered wood of an old picnic table near the bank. There, carved deeply into the worn surface, was a new inscription, raw and recent, almost glowing in the light of her headlamp. Lena P. The town's deadly tradition had marked her for the river's silent debt. Her life was now on the clock, ticking down with the river's rhythmic, unnerving flow. The investigation had made her the next target. The silence around Lena's rented apartment was the first sign. Sheriff Daniel found her laptop running. The video footage of the dark shape under the water still paused on the screen. The recorder was gone, presumably still with her. The police were finally forced to open a formal state-backed investigation, but the evidence was maddeningly thin. Lena was a ghost. The town was in an uproar, yet the chaos was strangely controlled. Several locals, mostly older men who spent their days drinking coffee at the diner, claimed they saw Lena near the river after she was officially missing, just standing silently on the bank, facing the water, her back to them. Was it mass hallucination? Or something else entirely? If you're still watching this, deep comment, I'm still here. Let's see who's brave enough to stay till the truth is revealed. because the truth of Mill Creek is far worse than any ghost story. The investigation became a cold, relentless grind. Eleanor, now driven by a renewed, terrifying urgency, helped Daniel trace Lena's steps. They found fragments of her notes, interviews with town elders who quickly clammed up, and dozens of confusing red herrings. Was it a potential human suspect? Someone orchestrating the deaths to maintain power? Or were the rumors of a cult from the 1970s true? A desperate faction who had taken the pact literally. Weeks into the investigation, Daniel's team finally managed to recover a piece of Lena's encrypted cloud storage. It contained one short, chilling video file that hadn't been on her laptop. It showed her interviewing an old man named Mr. Peterson, a recluse who lived in a cabin miles upriver. He was frail, his voice a dry, strained whisper, but his eyes were lucid and terrifyingly knowing. He hadn't just heard the legends, he had seen the price. "They say the river's a monster," Mr. Peterson whispered, leaning close to Lena's camera. "But the river only asks for a name. It's the people who choose the victim." He described a town council that meets in secret every February, drawing lots to decide which local family will provide the next name. Not the name of the victim, but the name of the family to choose from. He paused, looking straight into the lens, his face pale and drawn. "If the river says your name, young lady, don't answer. You belong to it then." He then told her a horrifying story about a past victim who tried to run. They managed to drive 2 states away, but the next morning, they woke up submerged in their own hotel bathtub, the water tasting like Mill Creek, their name carved into the porcelain. The terror wasn't about escaping the town. It was about escaping the debt. The pressure was taking a toll on Eleanor. Her grief was turning into a physical manifestation of the town's curse. She couldn't shake the dreams. She would fall asleep exhausted, only to be plunged into a cold, dark version of the river. Her son Sam would be just beyond her reach, calling her name, not in pain but in a desperate, pleading whisper. The sound was so real, so heartbreaking, that she often woke up screaming, the sound muffled by the thick, oppressive darkness of her old farmhouse. One morning, she woke up, sitting bolt upright, and noticed a dark, spreading stain on the ceiling directly above her bed. It was wet, and a cold, dark liquid was dripping steadily onto the sheets. It wasn't rain, as the sky was clear. It wasn't a burst pipe, as the water was too deep, too earthy. It was river water. It smelled of silt and cold stone. When she screamed and ran for the phone, the dripping stopped instantly, and the ceiling was dry. The stain vanished without a trace. It was the river reminding her that nowhere, not even the sanctity of her own home, was safe. The supernatural threat was not just outside, it was seeping into the very reality of the town. Sheriff Daniel, emotionally battered and wrestling with his deepest fears, ignored the official reports and followed Lena's last trail, the town archives. He spent 3 days in the dusty, mouse-infested records room, searching through fragile, handwritten ledgers. The current police theory was a human suspect. Daniel's theory was that he needed to find the source of the debt. Finally, in a brittle, leather-bound volume marked Town Planning, 1900-1910, he found the truth. The entry was dated March 12, 1904. It detailed the catastrophic flood that year, which had killed 12 people and destroyed the first settlement. It wasn't a natural disaster. The survivors, half crazed with grief and terror, didn't blame nature. They blamed a curse. The record, written in the frantic, spidery hand of the town elder, described the moment they gathered on the muddy bank. They made an oath to give the river one life, one name every year to prevent the river from taking the town again. They swore a silent pact, a blood debt passed down through generations. Daniel recognized one of the names of the original signers, written in faded ink, Thomas Cross, his own great-grandfather. Daniel's family wasn't protecting the town from the river. They were protecting the pact from the light. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. His father hadn't been warning him. He had been protecting a guilty secret. He was a son of the pact. Daniel rushed out to the riverbank frantic, knowing he was running out of time to save Lena. Of a truth, there are spirits in the waters. Hit the subscription button. Turn on the notification bell. Tell me where you're watching from in the comment, and let's find out what happened to Lena in the part 2 of this horror story.